Hey family, I'm Pastor Ern,
And I'm Lady Sarah.
and we want to invite you to a special event that we host on Sundays called Sunday Brunch with Accelerate Church. It's our unique take on Sunday morning service where we gather with friends over content and conversation, and honestly, it's going to be a vibe.
And what's on the menu? We have an amazing worship experience for you and your family. We also believe that God has an on-time word for you that is going to leave you full. And guess what? You can enjoy all of this from the comfort of your home.
That's right. Brunch starts at 10:30, and all you have to do is register by either clicking the link in the description or right in the chat. It's going to be an amazing time. You don't want to miss it.
See you at brunch.
You know, whenever Easter weekend approaches, you'll probably notice that Friday and Sunday get all the press. It's everything you see on your timeline. It's Friday and Sunday. We tend to focus on the gory crucifixion and the glorious resurrection. They dominate all the headlines, and rightfully so. Because on Friday, God let his voice be heard. He ripped the temple curtain like a piece of paper. He shook the earth. He blocked the sun. He opened up the graves like a can of corn. And then 2 days later, on Sunday, the Son of God that was killed on Friday came back to life and rose victoriously. He moved the stone out of the way and he folded up his grave clothes like an H&M shirt. And as the old preacher would say, he got up with all power in his hand. And yes, I think we should really focus on Friday. We should absolutely study Sunday, but I want to encourage you not to skip over Silent Saturday because many of us live in that tension right now. Silent Saturday is the day after the pain, but before the pleasure. It's the day after the despair, but the day before the delight. It's the day in between confusion and clarity, hopelessness and happiness, grief and glee. Silent Saturday is the day after the problem, but before the solution. And that's what the disciples experienced in our passage today. Jesus' body was reposed in sleep. He was in the grave. His cadaver was quiet, and his companions were in confusion. And the few disoriented disciples that remained confined themselves to the pseudo safety of the upper room. And I can imagine that when they were in the upper room, they probably just remembered the words of Jesus. They remember the Last Supper that they had with him when he roasted the lamb and fed them unleavened bread, and when he reclined with cups of wine at the Passover. I'm sure they remembered that. And as their minds were buffeted with all of these images of his trauma the night before, they remembered the lives he touched. They remembered the people he healed. And they probably wished that they could have done things differently. They were probably riddled with guilt, like, man, what would it have been like if we had been to his aid when he was seized in the garden? How come we didn't stand up with him at his trial? How come we didn't carry his cross when it was too busy or too heavy for him to carry? These folks were riddled with guilt and wallowing in self-pity. They hoped to change the world, but now they had to process this unfathomable thought that perhaps Jesus' mission had failed. Their dream quickly turned into a nightmare. And Silent Saturday is the day after your dream has died and you have to wake up in the morning and go on with your life, but you don't know how, and even worse, you do not know why. So yes, I do believe that Friday and Sunday should arrest our attention, but I want to encourage you to not scroll too far past Saturday, because many of us right now are in an unending silent Saturday. You've been praying for God to answer your prayer. You've been praying for him to come to your rescue, and all you've been getting is deafening and agonizing silence. You prayed for that relationship to work out this time after you came out of a bad breakup, and now you have no new prospects. You had this great job. You were living in your purpose, walking in your career, and now that has ended and you don't see another one on sight. To be honest, some of us are battling health issues. We just simply have not improved. Our career isn't progressing. Our life feels stagnant, and you've been crying out to God, but he feels as far away as a distant galaxy. And to make matters worse, as his voice has been lowered, the shouts of anxiety have been amplified. The same fears that tuck you in at night are the same ones that serve you coffee in the morning. You've been knocked down by the trauma of Friday, and it does not look like you're going to get off the mat. And some of us are wondering today, God, are you angry with me? I really haven't heard from you. I've been getting the silent treatment from you. Do you even care about my situation? So here's what I want to ask you today. What do you do when you find yourself in a perpetual state of silent Saturdays? What do you do when you've been crying out, praying, and asking God for answers, but they don't seem to be forthcoming? And I'll tell you this, the first one is you can choose how you respond. Like, none of us get the option of whether we experience a silent Saturday, right? We can't opt out of that. But we do get to choose how we respond to them. On one hand, you can live your life in a perpetual state of hopelessness, right? You can become skilled in the art of disappointment management, and you can medicate yourself from the pain and from the frustration with fleeting pleasures that will eventually lose their luster. On the other hand, you can live in denial. You can hydroplane over your emotions. You can have artificial optimism and live triumphalistically, denying that bad things have actually happened to you. It's your choice. But I just want to encourage you to choose a third way. The third way is trusting in God to work in the background and believing that he's going to bring results in the foreground. You can trust that God is working behind the curtains, and somehow in his divine algorithm, he's working your situation out for your good and for his glory. I don't know about you, but I am really looking forward to getting back to life as normal, as usual, if you will. I don't know. I miss people. Masks make my face hot, and depending on if I have a mint in my mouth, I don't like smelling my breath all the time. I'm sure somebody can agree with me out there on that. And so some of us have been debating, should I get the Moderna vaccine? Should I get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Or should I not get any of them at all? And I got to be honest with you, I haven't read every report. I haven't read every scientific publication, right? But what I know about vaccines is they aim to boost your immunity. And what I also learned is that after you get your second shot, it can cause a reaction. It's what scientists call reactogenicity. It's when you have this inflammatory response in your body as it responds to the vaccine. But what science tells us is that even though your arm might swell, or even though you might develop a rash, even though it's uncomfortable, it wipes away your energy, it is evidence that the vaccine is actually working. And I just want to tell somebody today that you might be experiencing the reactogenicity of God's silence. I know that it's uncomfortable. I know that it's like agonizing. You can't hear from him. But what I want to say is often proof that God is working on your behalf. It's evidence that he's with you. It's evidence that he's got your back. And it's a reminder that if you suffer with God, you will reign with him as well. Here's the second thing I want you to know is that God is speaking even when he seems silent. God is speaking even when he seems silent. Let's go on a theological rabbit trail for a second. Can we do that? All right, here we go. So Acts 2:27, Peter is quoting Psalm 16. And he says of Christ, "You will not leave me in Hades or allow your Holy One to see decay." So what we learn is that shortly after Jesus passed away, that he descended into a place called Hades. Hades is the New Testament equivalent of the Old Testament word Sheol, or which means realm of the dead. And if you took a tour of Hades, you would know that it has three compartments. On one side, you have the righteous side. That's what we call Abraham's bosom or paradise, right? Just stay with me. I got you. It's called Abraham's bosom. That's where Christ descended. And then you have another spot, a spot called Tartarus. This is where the fallen angels descended to and await in judgment in chains. And then finally, you have this place called Sheol. That's what we call hell, if you will. And what we learn is that there's a chasm between each of these compartments. But what we learn from 1 Peter 3:19 is that Jesus was preaching to the spirits in prison. And that means that even though there was some distance, Jesus had something to say. Jesus was talking. I don't know what he said. I don't know if he hooped at the end. I don't know if he illustrated his points. I don't know if he walked them line by line, gave them 3 points in the poem. I don't know what he did, but all I know is that he was speaking even though the disciples couldn't hear him. And I know that some of y'all are like, "God, you ain't talking back to me. I don't hear from you." But I want to let you know that Jesus is still speaking, even though you can't hear his cadence, even though you can't hear the inflection of his voice, even though you can't hear the tonality of what he's saying. You can be assured that Jesus is speaking. How do I know? Because I've got the Holy Scriptures, which are the divine exhalings of God. I can see how God is superintending all the events in creation for his glory. He's speaking through your limitations. He's speaking through your relationships. He's speaking through your wise counsel. He is speaking, and sometimes we just have to unplug our ears and listen. Here's my last one, is that silent Saturdays serve a purpose. You know, I often wondered, why do we need to have a Saturday in between Friday and Sunday? And so I would wonder, why would God stretch out a traumatic event like this for 3 days? God, why couldn't you just subdue the guard, roll away the stone, and resurrect Jesus immediately? And I began to think that sometime if God redeemed us immediately, we would not really appreciate the magnanimous power of what he just did for us. But that's a sermon for another day. But what I'll say is that what we see is that often in Scripture, there's this biblical pattern, this 3-day pattern. Joseph, brothers put him in a pit and released him after 3 days. Rahab is an Israelite, and she hid the spies for 3 days. We notice that before Esther walked to the king or approached the king, she fasted for 3 days. What we know is that it's a reoccurring problem or a reoccurring pattern for the people of God. They experience trouble one day, they hear silence the next day, and then they get deliverance the next. But on the other hand, I think that God allows some silent Saturdays just to remind us that he doesn't work on our timeline. He doesn't work according to the Augustinian or Gregorian calendar. He doesn't work according to our watches. He works in the way that he sees fit at the time that he sees appropriate to act. Why? Because he stands outside of time, and he's reminding us day by day, weekly, monthly, yearly, that we are not in control. He's the one that's in control. And what we do or what we experience in the midst of pain is the removal of the illusion of control. God is letting us know that I'm still working, I'm still moving, but sometimes I'm less concerned with the outcome and more concerned about who you're becoming in the process. Because God is concerned about sanctification. That's you looking more and more like him on a regular basis. We're so ready to get to the finish line that we forget that God is preparing us throughout life as we go through the race. And so what he's doing is he's letting us know sometimes we got to go through these silent Saturdays. Why? Because there is stuff that God will teach you in pain that he will not teach you in prosperity. You don't know about the power and the sustaining power of God when you're just sitting in luxury. And he just reminds us that I am your source. I want to remove all the layers of pretentiousness. I want to get through the false self so that you can know me and you can experience my power. So I want to just encourage you that if you trust in Jesus today, that you got to have the same confidence that Jesus has. His confidence was that the Holy One was not going to leave him in the grave. He was not going to leave him to experience decay. He just had confidence. He was like, God, I don't know how you're going to come through. I don't know how you're going to work. I don't know how you're going to move. I don't see any natural doors open, but I'm just going to trust you. And I want to encourage somebody out there today that you just need to trust him. You need to believe and have confidence that God is going to deliver you, that he's going to work for you, that he's going to work through you to bring about a result that ultimately is going to bring him glory. Jesus had this confidence that God was not going to leave him in the grave, and you can have confidence that he's not going to leave you in your trial. He's not going to leave you in your pain, because his apathy is not his indifference. He cares about your situation. How do I know? Because he went to the cross for you. He took the pain and punishment that you and I should have deserved 2,000 years ago. Under the cover of darkness, he had his hands pierced. He had his brow lacerated. He had his side impaled for you and I. The sins of the past, present, and future were poured upon him. He had his life ripped apart so that your life and my life could be put back together. This is the Jesus that we serve. So I just want to encourage you, if you're in a perpetual cycle or state of a silent Saturday, that you can trust God and you can trust Jesus because of what he's done for you and me on the cross of Calvary.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Say, great are you, Lord. We sing, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Say, it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. We sing, great are you, Lord. Say, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. It's your breath shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will, our hearts will cry. Say, great are you, Lord. And all the earth, say, we'll shout your praise. We'll cry. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. We sing, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. We sing, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Say, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. We sing, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. You're great in all the heavens and the earth. We sing, great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Say, all the earth will shout. Our hearts will cry, and these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout, and our hearts will cry, and these bones will sing. We sing, great are you, Lord. Say, all the earth, and our hearts will cry. Sing, great are you, Lord. Are you, Lord? And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord, and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord, 'cause it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassion, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with the nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord.